And for future plans outside of that, we got some stuff in store that we have some plans for. We'll be updating our feature board pretty soon, just to make sure that's all tidied up and up to date with where we're at. We'll be, you know, once that stuff's ready to talk about, we'll be talking about some new stuff. But we do have some plans for a couple of new things.
So that's Adam Brennan-Key, the game director of Grounded, talking about the future of Grounded. What's going to happen next? They appeared on Casually Grounded last night, the Grounded devs, and they basically gave a whole ton of answers about hotfixes gone live, about stuff that's still to come, and I'm going to give you the rundown. The future of Grounded, let's go. So they really emphasise that obviously the next few weeks are going to be hotfixes, as you should expect, as you should imagine, maybe for the next month or so, getting things right. Any problems with progression, any quests not working correctly, items not working correctly, loads and performance. We've already had one hotfix, we'll probably get another one next week, and yeah, it's looking good, like they're getting on top of all the major issues. I know a lot of you guys still have some issues to do with things like scanning stuff, popping up with the quest, even though you've scanned 1 million of the pebbles, and the embiggening cell where that's not working correctly to progress the game. The devs know about these and they're hoping that they will make it into the next patch. So the next month, hotfixes galore, making sure progression is running okay. Then what happens after that? Well, we're into like November, December, that time, and now that's when I think we might eventually see some sort of quality of life update, probably December time. Now, they didn't give definitive dates, but just the way that game dev goes, I'm sure they'll throw in a few little improvements as they do these hotfixes, but maybe a structured, more rigid update, I reckon at some point in December, maybe even January. Included in them kind of updates or before, we may see things like inventory sorting. Adam mentioned that they've got it working on a development build at the moment, and it looks like that will be coming soon, so you'll finally be able to sort your boxes and stuff with just one button. Yay! Adam did also speak about the inventory issues. Now with trinkets and even more loot from laboratories, it has become a bit of a deal. He said they're looking at ways to fix that. They feel like the pet system is kind of like a band-aid where you can obviously use the pets for extra inventory space. There needs to be something else. He didn't really elaborate, he just said they're looking at it. So he didn't say we're going to increase the inventory, which they might not do. They might come up with something different. It might be maybe an accessory slot just for accessories. And that is something he did kind of mention that they're looking into also. Or it'd be a good idea to have maybe the tuft as a separate slot and then the accessories in another slot. But inventory sorting and stuff like that will eventually appear. I spoke about the difficulty spikes that you might encounter in single player and multiplayer. Basically, single player is harder than multiplayer. Even though we've got some of the bugs with more health in multiplayer, it turns out that there's certain points or choke points maybe in the game where it just is a bit maybe too tough. So that's part of the balancing, that's part of the kind of rejigging that they'll probably get done in the next couple months. So what about some more features, new items and stuff like that? They are going to add all of the missing stuffed bugs. It was something I mentioned in my review. It was a bit weird we didn't have a single bug from the new range. That was just something they just ran out of time to do. So that will come in future. We're going to get more trophies to decorate your bases. And Adam has reached out and said he wants more ideas, more decorative items or vanity projects or vanity items they can have in your base. So give them some ideas. They've already got a ton, but they're still looking out for more. More traps, that could be a feature in the future as well. They definitely want to add a couple more traps. I'm guessing the things that we saw years ago in development, like honey traps and ice traps, maybe just didn't make the cut. So can you come up with something more exciting or more interesting than that? Then go ahead and join the Discord and pop it in suggestions. We'll see maybe some of these changes on the incoming way, because it's going to update the feature board, which hasn't been updated in a while now, or it isn't really truly reflective. Some of you guys noticed that they removed like the Ant Queen off the features board, I do believe, or maybe they're going to remove it. But I did say the features board will be updated pretty soon. So that'll be the next video I'll talk about in terms of the future of Grounded, how much it's either changed or what exactly it's got on it now. I showed you guys the up zip line the other day, and it does look like the devs are indeed thinking about that. Ways that you can traverse the yards in different ways.
And there's a couple other questions about traversal and faster ways of getting around the yard. And I think like the reverse zip lines is probably similar to that type of question. Yeah, it's something that we're looking at and seeing what we can do and how we can provide that. It's something that we've noticed in our playthroughs too, that we've been doing over the last month or so, and providing other mechanisms of fast travel, other options for the player is something that's we're discussing as a team to see what we can do about it.
Now, they said all sorts of ways, so maybe that might be something like a fast travel system or kind of just using things like gliders, but they said it has to have a pretty good reason. Like, it can't just be chucking a glider in. You need to be able to explore places with that glider, not just around the yard as it is now, but have a real use for it.
I know Sean Dunny, who's our environment artist on the project, who's made pretty much every single piece of environment art in the game. With all the base stuff, he probably wants to, or has some ideas on adding a couple more pieces for the tier 3.
So yeah, we're going to get more stuff to go with the Ash wall set that you can get late game. Again, Adam said maybe some ideas about that, what that could actually be. So we've got to think of something that's not just the same sort of shapes that we've got maybe with the mushroom walls or the grass plank walls. What would go well with that Ash set? What could you have that's a bit different from the other base structure pieces we've already got? So you can get more pollen now, and that's from the flowering dandelions, the yellow ones basically, but they are still looking at ways that you could maybe get more pollen in the future, or just getting that balance right, because they do feel like Shinobi Sneeze and stuff like that is a kind of item not used as much. And as I showed you guys in my top 5 useless items in Grounded a while ago, a lot of you voted that as the worst item.
We're not ready to talk about like new content. I think we're pretty focused on just bug fixing right now, and we're kind of thinking about what's next for Grounded at this point.
Now, although Adam said that, he did actually broach the subject of cut content, and someone asked about things like, are we going to see some that return, or maybe bosses or new stuff? And Adam basically said they've got no plans to add any new bosses to the game. 3 bosses they added is quite sufficient at the moment anyway to the backyard, and they don't have any plans to add any more bugs or creatures. Again, at the moment, with anything going on in the backyard. Now, it doesn't mean they're not going to update the game and add creatures in the future, but I imagine that will be a new area. I keep saying it's going to be either DLC or big update where we'll maybe explore something new, whether it be inside the house, the shed, another backyard, or surrounding areas. Adam likes the idea of bigger creatures, but he said they're really difficult to actually add to the game. Someone suggested a frog, and although he said it was cool, I don't think you should get your hopes up about anything large like that will fight in the future.
How many insects were cut from the game, and could we know what they are? I mean, people that have kind of dug through the data, I know that we had a couple creatures in the koi pond, like a water strider and a leech, that were cut. And you never know, maybe they'll make a comeback at some point. You know, if we have they were cut because they just didn't really have a good purpose for the game, and we couldn't really figure out what to do with them. So that's something that you know, I don't think anything's ever like completely cut. We'll you know, if we have a good idea for one of those creatures, maybe they'll come back in some way or another.
So what you're telling me, Adam, there's a chance, right? There's a chance. I found this kind of comment pretty interesting because Andy, the other Grounded developer, did say that they had cut content. Like the stuff we'd seen from leaks about a month before release, a lot of that content wasn't going to make it to 1.0. It was just dev world stuff they just tried and messed with. And I'm sure that's true, and Adam does reiterate that in this. He says there's a bunch of stuff obviously that they just throw in there just to have a little look and see. But there have definitely been some more leaks showing much more advanced creatures, weapons, armor, and more. And that's why I'm so convinced we're going to get a big DLC or big update that adds a new area to explore, or maybe some new bugs and creatures and stuff. So yes, there may be hope for leeches if that's what we really want, or water striders, but as he said, it's got to be something interesting, or it's got to be a really good way that they'll come back.
And like I think some other people are asking about cut stuff. I don't think anything's ever like cut. It just doesn't. It's not ready to be released at that point.
So that to me means that things that I've shown you in the past, things like earwigs, silverfish, possibly wasps at last, and other stuff may make a return in future content DLC. But don't hold me to that. They may change ideas, they may change the bugs. But yeah, that's what I'm guessing from that. That some of that stuff we saw just wasn't ready. It will be for the future. And in before anyone starts crying salty tears, well, why didn't they add it to 1.0 instead of these stupid reskins? Shut up, honestly, please. I'd punch you in your throat if you was in front of me. No lie. Okay, maybe I'm only partially joking. I'd just maybe do a little chop rather than a full punch. The yards, to my mind, is really packed as it is. We've got a ton of creatures, we've got tons of areas. They added that upper yard, and we got basically elite versions of some of the stuff we'd seen, and new creatures like the moths. That is game rule 101. Reuse some of your stuff because it will save development time a little bit, meaning you can focus more on stuff like story, progression, dungeons, maybe more extra art, coding to make sure the game runs better. So honestly, sincerely, no jokes aside or being catty, please don't just shout out reskins in a negative way. Think deeply about how much it costs to make a brand new bug with brand new animations and models, brand new attacks, how that fits into the yards, how that will work with other creatures' progression, and then what you're making out of that bugs, armors and weapons. We've already got like over 12, 15 different armor sets, I swear, and gazillion weapons. Grounded doesn't really need any more in this current backyard. Maybe an expansion, yes. Maybe something that takes us out of the backyard, for sure. I do get a bit salty, and especially when I see other YouTube creators just whinging and moaning about the use of reskinned creatures. And it's like, that's how you make games. Every creature in Ark Survival Evolved started life as pretty much a raptor before modelling it on something else in the early days. If it gives you time to focus on other areas that are more important than just another sword that does the same job, then that's more important. Couple of things they've definitely said won't be happening, or they can't really see it happening, is customizable clothing for the kids. They said it's just probably a bit too much, so we won't be getting that. You won't be able to customize the teens. It's a good idea, but just something that not on their high on their priorities. Also, they're thinking maybe after suggestions that they could look at possibly land rights, so you'd be able to build almost anywhere within caves and stuff. Someone suggested maybe as some sort of perk for completing the game. I don't know, Adam felt like it wasn't maybe that great idea, but when pushed a little bit, he did concede that, yeah, maybe it's something they can think about. But they'd have to worry about how it would progress stuff, like if they do any expansions or updates, how would that actually work afterwards? So he said maybe it could be a feature that we have in purely just creative mode. So personally, I think they did a great job here. They spoke about the current issues that we know are there and problems with maybe progression, the balance of things where it'll be improved with difficulty spikes for single player and maybe multiplayer as well. They've told us they're going to look at quality of life issues or just small improvements like the stuff bugs, the inventory sorting, and they've given us hope as well and told us that content that may have seemingly been cut will make a return in some way, shape or form in the future. And I'll keep reiterating, the time frame for me is this, and again, just reading what they've said. Hotfixes for the next month, then a few improvements, balances and checks before Christmas, maybe a few quality life issues, or maybe if we're really lucky, we'll get them stuff bugs maybe in November or December time, I reckon. But if anyone's expecting DLC to launch before Christmas or anything like that, no, it'll be sometime next year. I can't imagine it'll be before February or March. That's when I would expect to see maybe the first inklings of a big update or some sort of DLC. That might seem like a long time, but there's loads of stuff you can do in Grounded till then. So many improvements with the changes they may make to quality of life and obviously progression and stuff and just making sure it's all good. I could see that being a decent timeline. So I'm going to be there every step of the way. I'm still keeping Grounded as my main jam on this channel. I will be introducing some other stuff though, like small lands in the future and a bit more core keeper. But yeah, it's going to be Grounded consistently, regular content every single week. And I'll be there. Grounded have done a great job with the 1.0 update in my opinion. I've got my real review incoming, talking more in depth about the 1.0 features. So look out for that. And I'll be here as soon as we get any more news and maybe more info about some of that content in the future. Until next time, rat bags, laters.